Welcome back to level 1 of the Circle of Life. This is mission 2 of level 1. Let's review our key point. Living things interact with their environment in order to meet their needs and survive. To do so, every organism inherits characteristics from its parents that allow it to adapt and change to meet its needs. Organisms that do not inherit useful adaptations that give them an advantage will not survive as it competes with other organisms for resources. We find organisms living together and using their adaptations and instincts in ecosystems around the world. Producers, consumers, and decomposers play an important role in creating a diverse and balanced ecosystem. Our big question that I want you to continue to think about is, what do living things need in order for them to survive? Our mission 2 is on Punnett squares, and you'll understand what that means. Hopefully by the end of this, our mission objective is to explain how parents pass their characteristics to their offspring. So level 1, mission 1 was all about knowing that parents do that. They pass things on to their offspring. Now we're going to learn how they do that, or how scientists determine how they do that. We want to know, what are the two different types of characteristics that offspring inherit from their parents? And what method do scientists use to find out what characteristics offspring are likely to inherit from their parents?
Your height, the shape of your nose, your complexion, everything that makes you a unique individual are all passed down to you from your parents. These are all referred to as traits.
But what determines which traits will be passed down?
That was the same question asked by Austrian monk Gregor Mendel more than 100 years ago, and he decided to find the answer. Working with pea plants, Mendel learned several important rules about heredity. One was that an individual carried two factors, or genes, for each trait, but passed down only one. Another rule was that one of the factors, or genes, was dominant over the other.
Dominant?
That means it has more influence or power over the other. Let's use a simple example to explore these rules. If this black rabbit and white rabbit were to mate, what color do you suppose their offspring would be?
I don't know. Black? Maybe white? How about gray?
No need to guess. To find out, we'll use a simple diagram called a Punnett square. We'll assume there'll be 4 offspring, 1 for each square. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Next, we'll put the black rabbit here on the left, and the white rabbit on top. According to the rules discovered by Mendel, we know that each rabbit carries 2 genes that control color. Let's say the black one is purebred for black.
Purebred?
That means both of its genes are black. We'll refer to them as capital F, capital F. F is for fur. The white rabbit is also purebred. That means that both of its genes are white. We'll refer to them as small f, small f.
Which genes will the offspring inherit?
Since the black rabbit carries only 2 black genes, capital F, it can only pass down a black gene to each one of the 4 offspring. Since the white rabbit carries only 2 white genes, small f, it can only pass down a white gene. Each of the 4 offspring end up with both a black gene and a white gene. But each will be black because black is dominant. They may look exactly like the black parent, but there is a big difference. These offspring are no longer purebred, but are now called hybrids. They carry both a white gene and a black gene. The black trait is dominant, and the white trait is recessive.
Recessive?
That means it's hidden.
Well, what would happen if 2 hybrid rabbits were to mate?
Let's do another diagram using a Punnett square. This offspring will receive a black gene from the parent on the left and a black gene from the parent on top. It will end up capital F, and will be purebred black. This offspring will get a black gene from the parent on the left and a white gene from the parent on top. It will end up capital F, small f, but will be black because black is dominant. This offspring will end up with a white gene from the parent on the left and a black gene from the parent on top. It will end up small f, capital F, but will be black because, again, black is dominant. Finally, this offspring will end up with a white gene from the parent on the left and a white gene from the parent on top. What color will it be?
It has only white genes, so it has to be white.
Good. Now, which offspring gets which gene is completely up to chance. All we know for sure is that about 1 in 4 will be white. None of the rabbits will be gray, by the way, because in this example, these traits are not blended. The same rules of inheritance apply to many of the traits found in all plants and animals. If you were to cross hybrid purple corn with hybrid yellow corn, what would be the result?
That would depend on which color is dominant.
Right. And since purple is dominant, the ears would have kernels that are about 75% purple and 25% yellow. 3 to 1.
Let's go watch this movie before beginning. Please make sure you're giving it your attention. It will be an overview about what we're going to learn about this mission. Last mission, we learned that offspring usually look like their parents. So cats give birth to kittens and lions give birth to lion cubs. Sometimes, however, we also learned last mission that offspring with the same parents can look very different from each other, meaning that they have different characteristics than other organisms of the same type. So for example, you might have a brother or sister, and you might have some of the same characteristics as your brother and sister, but you also, and you probably do, have different characteristics as well. So your brother might have red hair, and you might have brown hair. You might be short, your sister might be tall, but you might both have blue eyes. So you share some characteristics, but you have some characteristics that are different as well. Why is this? And remember that Gregor Mendel from last mission wondered the same thing and began to study how characteristics are passed from parent to offspring. And he concluded that every organism carries 2 genes for every characteristic, but only one of those genes is passed down to its offspring. And then that one gene or one characteristic is dominant over the other characteristic. One characteristic is dominant over the other characteristic. So I want you to think of gene in this slide as a characteristic. One characteristic is dominant over the other gene. So that means that when you were born, when you were made, you got one characteristic from your parent, from your mom, you got one characteristic from your dad, and whichever one of those characteristics was dominant, that's the one that came to you most of the time. So let's talk about dominant and recessive. Characteristics that show up more often in offspring are called dominant. Characteristics that show up less often in offspring are called recessive. It's important to know those differences. Offspring can receive 2 dominant or 2 recessive characteristics from their parents. We call these offspring purebred because you are receiving 2 of the same type of characteristic, whether it be 2 dominant or 2 recessive. But then offspring that only receive 1 dominant and 1 recessive characteristic from their parents, we call these offspring hybrid. Hybrid receive either 1 dominant and 1 recessive, or 1 recessive and 1 dominant, depending on how things shake out. Hybrids are different from purebred even if they look the same. It's important to know that you can receive different characteristics even though you look pretty much the same. It's just knowing that it's kind of hidden in your DNA, these dominant and recessive, and you'll see what that means hopefully here in a few seconds. They have one dominant and one recessive gene or characteristic. For example, two dogs could have black fur, which is the dominant characteristic, but only one of those dogs could be a carrier for the white fur or recessive. So their offspring could have white fur, even though the dog or the dogs together have black fur. We can only see the physical characteristic, meaning what is shown. We can only see that physical characteristic. Punnett squares. And understand, this is kind of advanced science here. My wife teaches high school, and in middle school you'll see this, but I wanted you to get some experience with this because I think it's important to know how this works, and it kind of gives us a better understanding of how heredity, which is all about level 1, how it really operates. So it's not anything you'll be tested on, but I still want you to kind of understand the process and work through it with me in your notes, please. To find out what genes or characteristics parents will pass on to their offspring, scientists use a Punnett square. The Punnett square is the standard way of working out what the possible offspring of two parents will be. It finds the probability, there's a math term, of what genes will be passed down from parent to offspring. When we use Punnett squares, we use a capital letter to show a dominant characteristic and a lowercase letter to show a recessive characteristic. So let's do this. You should have a couple of these blank ones in your notes. Please fill them out as we are going along so that you understand how to set this up and how they work. So you see that we set it up by constructing a grid with two perpendicular lines. Next, we put the genes or characteristics of one parent across the top and the other parent's characteristics along the left sides. So in this case, one parent has two dominant characteristics and the other parent has two recessive characteristics. So I put one parent up at the top and I put the other parent off to the side. Next, I'm going to fill in the boxes by copying the column and row head letters down and across into the empty spaces. So watch how this is going to work. I go down first and then across. I go down first and then across to make 4 different outcomes. Because in this situation, each outcome has a dominant gene, this offspring will show the dominant characteristic. Because the dominant always takes precedent, means it always has more power. It dominates that recessive characteristic. So now let's say that both parents in this cross are hybrid. White, dominant white is capital W. Recessive violet is lowercase w. Notice that in this case, 3 out of the 4 have capital W's in them. So that means the physical characteristic is going to be dominant white, whereas one of them has 2 lowercases, meaning that that's going to be violet. So that means 1 out of 4 is going to be violet. Let's do one more. I want you to do this in your notes with me. Red hair is dominant over blonde hair. So we're going to make a cross between a hybrid redhead and a purebred blonde. So notice at the top, it's a hybrid redhead, meaning that it has one dominant and one recessive. So capital R, lowercase r. And then a purebred blonde. Blonde is recessive, that's 2 lowercase. And then we go across, and that's the outcome that we get. What percentage or fraction of the offspring will have red hair? Well, I see 2 capital R's, 2 boxes with 2 capital R's, or with a capital R, and so that means 2 out of the 4 will have red hair, meaning 50% will have red hair. We're going to skip this last one. And we're going to say this is the end of this mission. If you have any questions, please let me know. We're going to work through some of these later, and hopefully you get a little better understanding. Again, those Punnett squares are not anything you'll be tested on. I just want you to have a good understanding of how they work so that you can kind of understand that you don't always look like your parents for a reason, because sometimes we have dominant genes or characteristics, and sometimes we have recessive characteristics, and that kind of allows you to understand why you might sometimes look different than your parent. If you have any questions, please let me know. This will be the end of level 1, and we'll be ready to level up very shortly. Before being ready to level up, make sure that you watch the video for your boss questions, and then write your answers to them. Don't move ahead without looking to that help video. That help video is there to help you. Please take advantage of it.